Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi and here I like to talk about luxury beauty. Today we're going to be looking at the new brushes from Rephr for holiday 2022. There are 5 new brushes and these are all available in the concept store. The bundle set is $75, so that's 50% off. They've also added some more brushes to the concept store and these prices are available while supplies last. So if you're not familiar with the concept store, basically what that is you can go and purchase a brush from the concept store for 50% off. And in return for that discount, what you're doing is you are offering to provide your feedback to Rephr. So you'll get an email like a couple weeks later, asking you for your thoughts on the brushes and, any improvements or suggestions that you have. And this is a way for them to, continually modify their brushes and, keep their goal is to really, provide what the customer wants. So that's your place to give feedback to Rephr, and they're really responsive. So as a matter of fact, these 5 brushes, which are dirty at the moment because of the demos that we're going to look at, but these 5 brushes are all in response to customer feedback. So all of these have been requested by customers. They've gotten these from reading different comments left on people's videos. For example, I know some of you guys have requested certain shapes here, and also directly from feedback from like the concept store and so forth as well. So these 5 brushes have all been requested. Let's dig in and see what we have. So first I'm going to just show you what the shapes are. We have 33 here, which is kind of a large arrowhead shaped brush. All 5 of these brushes are undyed Go hair, so they're suitable for any product medium. 34 is going to be your traditional eyeliner brush for, liquid eyeliner. And then we have 35, which is going to be a small rounded brush. This is a very multi-purpose brush. We're going to look at a few demos with that. Then we have 36, which is kind of this like half angled here. You can see it's like an arched angle, but then it's straight in the back. So I have one comparison for that one. And then we have 37, which is a domed blush brush. And we're going to take a look at some comparisons for each of these and some demos. So let's start off talking about the brushes and the demos. Taking a look at brush 33, we have this arrowhead shape. And it is kind of the size of a large eyeshadow brush or a smaller face brush. So that makes this really multi-purpose. I do have a few brushes that we can compare this to, but I find that this shape and size is very multifunctional. So in the demos here, you can see, I actually didn't show this one, but you can use this for under eye concealer, and the angle on here really helps to get into little like tighter spots and so forth, such as the inner corner and things. It also works if you are doing some sort of like eye look and you want, like, for example, not really a cut crease. I think it might be a little bit thick for that. But if you do want to like clean up the edges and so forth, you can definitely use these angled edges for that. And in the demos here, I used this for eyeshadow. I think the arrowhead shape really does a great job at getting into those corners. And it's large enough to do a one and done eye look if you're interested in that. But yet it is small enough that you've got some precision with it. So the density on this is moderate, and I think that's good because it is flat enough that you are able to, use it precisely for things, yet it's fluffy enough that you can also blend out a little bit. So this brush overall, I think functionally it works well as concealer. You could use it for highlight, and you can use it around the eyes, for eyeshadow and things like that. This is also an eyeshadow brush that if you are comfortable with just using like 1 or 2 shades and you want to travel and so forth, you could definitely use this to do an entire eye look. It reminds me a lot of one of the Westman Atelier eyeshadow brushes, which we will look at in the comparisons, which is my purpose for that particular brush. However, that is synthetic and this is undyed Go hair. So let's move on to comparisons. First up, let's look at the Westman Atelier eyeshadow brush. This is eyeshadow 1. You can see that the Westman Atelier is going to be shorter in handle, and you can see it's also going to be a more narrow brush, and this is synthetic. So take a look at the movement here. The Rephr is going to be a little bit fluffier, and you can see there's a little bit more bend and flexibility to the bristles, so it's not going to be quite as stiff as the Westman Atelier. So these can both work with creams, liquids, and powders. Overall, I think they're both really great brushes. You can see the angle is going to be a little bit steeper on the Westman Atelier, where it's slightly more curved here on the Rephr 33. Another one I want to take a look at, this is the Esom W23. This is sable hair. And again, you can use this one with liquids, creams, and powders as well. And you can see it is going to be a smaller brush, definitely a longer handle, but the brush head is smaller. This is actually more curved. It's not really a true arrowhead, whereas this actually comes to more of a point, but it is kind of a similar shape. Next up, we have another brush from Esom. This is the T43, and this one is synthetic. You can see this is going to be an arrowhead shaped brush, but like the Westman Atelier, this is going to be more narrow, and it's not really a steeper crease, but it starts higher up on the bristles. So this one's going to be a little bit longer, and notice the stiffness of this compared to the Rephr. And let me just show you that W23. You can see it's a little bit more flexible than the synthetic offerings. And then last up, this is the Smith 253. This is a small arrowhead, but they do have a larger version. And you can see this one here in particular is very small, but the shape, look at the shape. The shape is pretty much dead on, just a smaller size. And here is the Smith. You can see it's nice and flexible, just like the Rephr. Next, we're taking a look at brush 34, and this is your traditional eyeliner brush that works really well for using liquid eyeliner. So I used it here with the Esom mixing medium, and I, essentially made my eyeliner using the mixing medium and a deep brown eyeshadow. And I think it works great. You have a lot of precision with this. I am not somebody who is great with liquid liner. I don't do it too frequently, but I have to say this is probably the easiest eyeliner brush that I have used because it's very fine. It moves very well, and the bristles don't flay out. Sometimes when you're using some of these, they kind of, flay out a little bit while you're using it, and it doesn't keep your line quite as smooth. And that happens, as the shadow starts to kind of dry on your brush. I have not had this issue. I've actually been using these brushes for quite a while now. So I don't have any real comparisons. This is the Esom W01 sable hair. You can see it's going to be significantly larger in shape and not quite as pointed as the Rephr 34, but I don't, you may already have a brush similar to this, although for me, I really don't. And I think the actual shape of this works really well for, creating more detail, whether it's something like a wing liner or if you're doing artistic detail somewhere on the face. Next, let's take a look at brush 35. You can see this one has a round ferrule, and it's going to be a round, kind of like a buffing brush, but you do have, it's not flat on the top. It is rounded on the top as well. So let's take a look at the demos for this. And again, this is going to be one of your most multi-purpose brushes. You can use this under the eye for concealer, and it works really well for that. Again, undyed goat hair means you can use it for powders, liquids, or creams. You can also use this for blush. It reminds me a little bit of the Westman Atelier Baby Blender, which was intended for use with the blush sticks. So we do have a demo with that here as well. You can see that it blends out the color. You can really buff this out. I also like to use this. You could use this for cream contour, something where you want to put color, not in a super tiny spot like eyeshadow, but a smaller area on your face. So if you're somebody who uses contour a lot, and you contour around your nose and so forth, this brush would be really great for that. And you can also use this for highlights. So I think overall, it's a really multifunctional brush. I do find it a little bit large to use on the eyes, but underneath the eyes, it's fantastic. Let's take a look at a few comparisons. All right, so here is the Rephr 35, and this is the Westman Atelier Baby Blender. Again, we've got the shorter handles in the Westman Atelier, and you can see that the Westman Atelier is going to be slightly smaller, and because it has synthetic fibers, it's going to stay a little bit stiffer in place than the Rephr. The Rephr, because of the length, it's really going to blend out pretty similarly to the Westman Atelier, but each fiber itself, each hair here, is going to kind of, bounces back a little bit more softly. The synthetic fiber bounces back more quickly. There's more spring to it. So that will change things slightly, but you can see that the length is pretty similar. The shape is going to be pretty similar, although this is actually just, it's slightly larger and slightly more, if you see your hairs go up and then we curve, whereas here they actually start curving a little bit lower. So slightly different in shape there. This is the mini base from Sonia G, which is a blend of synthetic and undyed goat hair. You can see that the mini base is going to be larger, but we have a similar shape, and this has longer bristles, so it is going to be a little bit more, a little airier. You can see how that performs compared to the 35. And then this is the soft concealer from Sonia G. So you can see the size of the handles in the Fusion series are a little bit longer here. And this is actually going to be a little bit shorter. So the hairs are about the same length. The Sonia G is ever so slightly longer than the Rephr, and the diameter you can see is smaller in the Sonia G. And here we do have a little bit of a steeper curve before it gets rounded. This is a little bit more squared off. So here is the Sonia G versus the Rephr. You can see the Rephr is going to be a little bit stiffer. It's a little bit more dense. All right, let's take a look at 36. I think 36 is a really unique brush. I have seen this shape in some synthetic brushes. I don't own any of those. I can't remember what brand it was. It might have been like Sigma. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have those. But you can see that we kind of have this arched angle here. So it goes up and then over, up and then curves over. And then it's straight back here. So you can see with the width how this kind of curves on the sides as well. And this allows it to really get into corners and everything well, but it's kind of like you've got a fluffy arrowhead brush essentially. And this is gonna help it, this flat back kind of helps it perform more like an arrowhead brush. So let's take a look at a demo for this. And again, I think this brush is pretty multifunctional as well. You can use this for under eye concealer as I'm showing you here. I do prefer the 35 a little bit more for the concealer than this one because it is a little fluffier. Because the 35 is a little bit more dense and more symmetrical, I just prefer that one a little bit for under eye concealer, but both of them work really well for that. You could, I did not use this that way, but you could use this for cream blush as well. I don't think it's super effective that way, but it is an option, especially if you're traveling or trying to take fewer brushes. But what I really like this for is one and done shadows. And because it is slightly fluffy, it works well in the crease as well as actually laying color down on the lid. Now, it is a little bit of a larger eyeshadow brush, so it is going to be best more for like 1 or 2 shades, not detail work. And then you could also use this one for highlight. So using this for highlight, it puts the color on very well. You can target that application and it's fluffy enough that you can blend out those edges. So I think it's a very effective brush. Now I only have one comparison for that. Let's take a look. This here is the Ray Morris brush. This is synthetic. It used to be, they used to make these out of undyed goat hair. I don't have that version, but you can see it's a similar shape. But this is actually going to be more triangular, whereas this is more of a rounded triangle here. And they both have the straight back, but you can see that the actual angles here on the sides, everything about the Rephr is going to be more rounded than the Ray Morris. So look at how the Ray Morris goes. You can see it's going to be stiffer. And because of the shape of this and the fact that you're using the synthetic fibers, this one works really well for putting on the color. It doesn't blend out in the crease quite as well as the Rephr because of that fluffiness. You can see how much more bend you have in the Rephr hairs versus the synthetic Ray Morris. And then for me, one of the biggest differences here is the hair lengths are starting to increase on the Rephr, like right here, really rounding that out. Whereas on the Ray Morris, you go all the way up to here. So it's not going to be rounded in the front, which kind of changes. You know, I feel like the Rephr is actually slightly more multifunctional because of that rounded effect there. And I think it allows it to be used a little bit more effectively for some face applications as well. And last up, we have the Rephr 37. So this is going to be your quintessential cheek brush, and Rephr has come out with cheek brushes in the past. I have enjoyed their blush brushes, but honestly, none of them were a favorite for me over my Sonia G blush brushes. However, this 37 is a strong contender. So with this, because it is undyed goat hair, so in this demo here, you can see that I'm actually using this with a cream blush stick from Westman Atelier. This is the shade Mimi. And you can definitely blend that out, buffs out the edges nicely. You could apply the blush directly to the face first and then use this to kind of buff it out. That works well. But this brush definitely has a density that is strong enough, a high enough density, where you can buff out a cream product very smoothly. But you see it, we can also use this with powder blush, and it's going to work really well. You know, if you have a blush where you want to pick up powder, like something that's firmer in the pan or something that you need to layer more, this brush has a high enough density that does that effortlessly. So I think it's a really great blush brush, and it has a round ferrule, which I love. These kind of dome-shaped round ferrule blush brushes. They are a weakness of mine, and honestly, there aren't too many of them. You know, a lot of them are more like either an oval ferrule, or even if they have the round ferrule, the brush shape is just a little bit different. So I really like this one in particular. You can also use this for bronzer. And so I'm showing you a demo here with the bronzer as well, so you can kind of see what it does for that. Now let's take a look at a few comparisons. I wanted to first show the Rephr 05, and this brush is one that I've used this for face powder as well as for blush. It's kind of that in-between size, but you can see you've got a pinch ferrule here. This is going to be more of an oval shape, but you know, I feel like this is like a smaller round barrel version of the Rephr 05. The Rephr 04 is actually an angled cheek brush. Here, I have that one right here. So you can see it's just like this portion, but in the round version. So I think it's kind of like an in-between brush between the 4 and the 5. Now, shape-wise, my brush that's most similar to this is the Omnia Gold cheek brush. This is the domed blush brush, and I love this brush. This is actually going to be dyed goat hair, whereas the Rephr's undyed goat hair, making this a little bit more versatile. But look at that. They're very, very similar. The only difference really here is the angle here. This is going to go more straight up and then curve over like a rainbow. We have that, but you can see this actually kind of angles here and then flattens on the top a little bit more, whereas this is more of a gradual curve. This gets a little bit flatter. So very, very similar though, very similar in size. The diameter looks to be about the same. The Omnia might be slightly larger. And one of my favorite Sonia G blush brushes, or actually it is my favorite Sonia G blush brush, this is the Classic Cheek. And I love this because you have a dome-shaped blush brush, very similar in size, but notice how different these brushes actually are. That's because we do have an oval ferrule here on the Sonia G. They're both undyed goat hair. The Sonia G is going to be a little bit softer. I think the quality of the goat hair might be a little bit higher. This is Psycho. This is probably a mix. I don't know if there's Psycho in there. There might be a mix of that and Soho. So overall though, you can see that they're both going to have kind of a density to buff things out, but the Rephr is a little bit more dense. So the center portion of the bristles here really kind of stay in place to allow you to blend and buff things out a little bit more. So this is kind of a buffing blush brush, and I'm all here for that. So overall, I think all 5 of the brushes from Rephr are really great, useful brushes. I think it's going to depend what you already have in your collection, but my personal favorite out of all of these is the Rephr 37 because, as I mentioned, I love this shape blush brush, and really it's not easy to find something at exactly like this smaller cheek size with the round ferrule and this dome shape. You know, you would think it might be easy because it looks like such a common shape, but everything I have is just slightly different. So this is going to be my favorite. And then honestly, I think these are all great. And I think it's really hard to pick after that. I think after that, my next favorite would be this 36 because I love this rounded shape and it's just different. It's unique. And then after that, I think the 33 and 35 are tied for me because the 35 is incredibly useful. It's one that I'll use quite a bit. I'll probably use it a ton for concealer in particular, but this Arrowhead one, I think I'll use a lot on the eyes for one and done shades in particular. So I think those are kind of tied, and the 34 is just one that fills a void in my collection, but it's not one that I will use super frequently myself just because I don't use liquid eyeliner too often. However, I think it's a great brush if you are somebody who does. So overall, I think all 5 brushes are excellent and they're all filling and meeting needs in the Rephr brush collection that have been kind of missing, and not even just from Rephr brushes, but in my personal collection they're filling some voids. So I'd love to know what you think of these brushes if you're interested in any of these, and don't forget to check out the Rephr concept store and check out the brushes that they have for 50% off. I will leave some videos linked down below in the description box of some of my favorite Rephr brushes. So if you're looking for a shopping guide, you know, just check those out and you can see how I like to use those and why those are favorites in my collection. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful and I will see you very soon. So have a wonderful day.